Welcome, everyone, to another part of our Homestead from Scratch. I'm here with John Tejan, Logan Hyde, and I'm Greg Dowd. And tonight, the topic of conversation is going to be on butchering your livestock. And Logan has got that on lockdown. So he's going to give us a rundown of the stuff that he goes through when he's working on the homestead to butcher livestock and give us a presentation on that tonight. So without further ado, Logan.
All right. Sorry. I was paying attention. Sorry, guys. I had to, I forgot to put this to stream to my audience. So they just started getting it right now. All right. So, yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about butchering animals really on a homestead scale. I know in the chat here before we came on live, I mentioned John, you know, he's selling beef to individuals, but a cow is certainly somewhere you don't want to start if you're doing it yourself. So we're going to be talking about medium to the small livestock. Now, when I say medium livestock, I mean animals that are, let's say, under 400 pounds. Anything under 400 pounds is considered medium. And then on the small side, you're looking at anything from, you know, a couple of pounds. Or, I mean, if you're doing something like maybe fish or pigeons, you might be looking at a pound to up to maybe like 20, 25 pounds. On small livestock. I would still consider a turkey, even though it's a large bird, to be small livestock. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. This is not if you want to start processing your own cattle or buffalo or whatever. I'm not experiencing that. So anything that I say, some of the stuff might apply, but it's not going to be a whole lot. So we'll start off talking about mental prep for doing this. If you're just starting out homesteading, or you've been homesteading for a while, but maybe you only keep chickens and you only get their eggs and you grow a garden and everything, and you've never had to cull birds, or you've never, you know, raised any of your own meat and processed it, that to me is the number one thing to get down now. Mainly because all the other stuff you're going to be able to figure out. You're going to be able to do it. You're going to have some rough patches of trying to figure stuff out. You'll get better as you go. But the main thing is getting mentally prepared for what you're about to do. You're going to take something's life. And a lot of people have never done that. Unless it's, you know, I mean, we kill things every day, but just don't realize it, whether it's through another person or whether you're killing microorganisms or whether you're killing bugs, whether you're killing plants. You know, we're taking, life is being taken every day. So it's something that's really natural. So for me, the mental prep is extremely important, because when I go to dispatch an animal, I can't let my emotions get in the way, because if I let my emotions get in the way, that can compromise the humane dispatch of that animal. So I did, let's see here, I think it was 6 ducks that I processed this week. I had 6 drakes that I had to get rid of. I got them ready to process everything. And these ducks, they have been raised from little bitty babies by me, you know, fed daily by me. They follow me around like puppy dogs. These ducks, when I grabbed them to go and do the deed, they were, you know, they don't really care for being held, but they were perfectly calm. They were kind of like, you know, just sitting there bobbing their heads and wagging their tails. They wag their tails like dogs, and you know, like, hey, Dad, where are we going? So it's a huge mental strain on people to do that to an animal that you have properly taken care of. Now, to give everyone a little bit of, you know, I guess ease of mind, is that remember that if you're raising these animals on a homestead, 9 times out of 10, if you're just halfway trying, that animal has had a life that is 10 times better than it would have in a factory farm. Every day you go to the grocery store and you buy that meat, you are getting basically tortured animals, just to be frank about it. Now, that's not, judging anybody or trying to get up on a high horse. I buy stuff from the grocery store. So I'm not saying that, everyone who buys from the grocery store and eats their meat there is, approved of concentration camps or whatever. But that's just the cold hard facts. Those animals have not been treated well. So to me, it's far better to take the dirty work on myself and know that animal has been properly respected and that it's been, properly cared for to the best of my abilities, because none of us are perfect and we're not going to get everything right. So that mental preparation of taking an animal's life, the one thing I think is really important for people to remember is that don't let your emotions get in the way of that animal having a humane dispatch. Because, for example, like with the ducks, I slit their throat and break their necks. Because what you do is if you slit their throat right here, all of the blood comes out and basically makes them pass out. And you break that neck, take the head all the way off. If you've got a good sharp knife, it's easy to do. You've got to really get in there. You got to grab their head and be ready to cut. You got to be real precise with everything. If you let your emotions get in the way when you're dispatching that duck, you may not do a good dispatch, and then you're causing suffering to that animal. So think of it that way. Just take your emotions, set them aside for a moment, and give that animal the respect that it deserves in the dispatch or, in the killing. I don't know why dispatch has become such a common word in Homestead. I think it makes us feel better than saying, killing that animal. But I think that, just getting yourself mentally prepared that, hey, I'm not going to let my emotions and my, poor little duck or poor little rabbit or whatever get in the way of me being able to do this in a manner that's going to be quick, easy, and at, the most painless it can possibly be. So mental prep is just huge on that. And it's a whole different world than when you're dealing with like either fishing or hunting, in my opinion, because, you're from a distance, a lot of other factors that go into that. But mental prep is extremely important of just being ready to do the deed, to take the animal's life.
I can attest to that. Like, just raising some chickens and then getting to the point where you're, had a bunch of roosters that I'd get rid of, and you just get to that point and where you have to do the deed, like you said, and yeah, man, I didn't think it would bother me that bad, but it actually did. Like I kind of before each one of them, I had to kind of said a little prayer for the thank you for the life of the animal and all that kind of stuff. Because we used to raise them when we were kids and do that for meat when we were kids, but I guess I had never done it on my own. So doing it on my own was like a totally different thing. And yeah, I did have a lot of kind of trepidation getting to do it. And the first time was a little, I was definitely nervous about it.
Yeah, I don't have any good stories to tell because it's just not something I do. So I don't have the right mental framework to do it, and I'm respecting what you're saying, Logan, because it's too difficult for me, and my attachment to my animals. I just fortunately, the large livestock are taken care of at the processing center. But even then, anytime you raise an animal, especially one that you're going to consume, whether you dispatch them or not and process them or not, there's still an emotional connection, and then there's a good spiritual connection between the owner and the animal, because and especially one of the reasons I got into what I'm doing is the humane treatment of animals, especially cattle, as you referenced. They're not treated well when grocery store beef. which is another show altogether. But you want to respect that animal. They're giving, they're part of an ecosystem on your farm. They play a valuable part, and then ultimately, they feed you, and it's not something to be taken lightly. And I'm not saying some people do take it lightly, but it's certainly worthy of thinking about it. I mean, because it's when you break things down to homesteading level, it's different than when I lived in Nashville in a condo and went to the grocery store. When they're part of your existence on your homestead, and they're part of the family, really, because they're feeding the family. And so yeah, I think homesteaders have a respect there that now the part about getting nervous and not being able to do the deed, that's definitely has to be figured out in your head before you go down that road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just say that I totally agree. Now, not everybody is going to do this, and if you can find somebody in your community like me, I take it pretty well. I mean, I can do it because I can set my emotions aside and do what needs to be done. So I do have that type of mind. Hopefully, I'm not a psycho,
Torture little animals.
Torture, but no, for me, I mean, if anything goes slightly awry, and I feel like that animal felt like that much of pain, it makes me feel horrible. I cannot stand to have that happen. Yeah. Something that is an innocent life, because that's what you're doing, is you're taking a life of something that's innocent. And I mean, I do sympathize with vegans. I think it's a horrible diet. I think that it's something you shouldn't do. I think that everyone should be involved in the circle of life. But I do understand where they're coming from. Like, taking away something's life so that you can live is a hard thing. But at the same time, I also respect soil life. I also respect plant life. I think that all life is important. I don't think all life is necessarily equal, but it's all important and it all deserves respect. So, for me, I have a completely different mindset on that. But now I do think that every person who is on the planet that's going to eat any kind of meat or anything really should have to at least once watch an animal that they've raised go through that process and be there and look at it. I mean, maybe not, if you can't do it, if you're afraid of, hurting the animal, but be there for the process, show the respect to the animal, do it at least once. So that way you can have an understanding. So when you get that food put on your table, you have an appreciation of what goes into that. Yeah. I think is extremely important for everybody. Children, both my children, ages right now 5 and 3, they're almost present at every dispatch and process that I do of our animals, and they're seeing it, they're participating a little bit, and we're explaining to them what's going on, why we're doing it, why it's important, and it's extremely healthy. We've taken children out of that, and it's especially if you go your whole childhood, your whole adolescence, and your whole adulthood not being connected to that. I think you miss something and see, I wasn't necessarily raised. My parents didn't process animals with us or anything, and so I just happened to be blessed with the, I guess, mental fortitude to be able to get it done. And, I just want to pass that on to my children. Not that I'm saying we should just make everyone calloused to taking life away, but we should let everyone understand what's going on and, what the process is. One other thing that I was going to mention was, let's see, we just talked about it. We talked about the getting mentally prepared to do the dispatch and everything. Just that mental preparation of being able to actually do it, so that way it's done properly. There was something else. I think it was either you or Greg mentioned that I was going to touch on. Looks like Greg's back.
Yes, he is.
I don't remember.
Okay. There was something else that one of you mentioned. I was going to mention about the mental prep thing.
All I was like, I guess what helped me out was partly even my Russian buddy was like, "Hey man, you just gotta do it the deed, man," you know. And then it was like, also I was just before I would get into it. Speaking of the mental prep part, for me, what helped me to get into being able to actually thinking about the animal's life and everything like that, how it had a good life compared to other animals, and then kind of saying a prayer like, thank you for this animal's life and giving myself and my family sustenance and things like that, and just kind of having I don't know, kind of going through that in my head, and like saying that prayer kind of helped me feel better about the situation, I guess.
I remember what it was now. I'm glad you went back to that, because I do, before I start, the majority of the time, I'm either thinking about it or I'm, praying about this, more on a religious side of just, hey, I've done everything that I can to be properly prepared to do this, and just kind of a prayer for God to guide my hand and make me able to make the ending of that animal's life as painless as possible. And that helps a lot, just with the mental prep, and just having that sense of gratitude before you get started, to get it done. I mean, it does. It really does help a lot. But now that we're done with all the super dark, heavy stuff, I guess for right now, anyway, we can move on to some tools that you might want to. And I'm gonna have to get the camera. I've got a baby girl here wanting some attention. She came in the Great Pyrenees. Let's see some tools. So tools, really and truly, if you're going to do especially small livestock, are minimal. And I'm not going to go into every single thing that you can get and every single thing that you can do. Not even going to go into medium livestock, because there's a lot of different tools that you get into with that. I'm going to talk about the small right now and just some of the things. And the one of the things that I like, I need to better my sharpening skills, really. Here, Skoda, go on, get out of here. Go on, girl. I'll come pet you later. Anyway, knife sharpening skills is really important, I think, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of processing. But it's not something that everybody does. I don't do it well. So what I do is I get these little cheap knives. These are just fillet knives back in the fishing section at Walmart for $5. The reasons I get these is because, for one, they come really sharp out of the packet. Number two, they're $5. So if you're going to be learning to sharpen knives, you don't want a $200 knife to, start practicing on. One of these here, you mess it up, no big deal. Get somebody to fix it, try to fix it yourself, or throw the thing away. It's $5. You're not going to be crying when you mess up the edge on a knife like this. And I like keeping several around, just because, let's say I'm working on it, and say you're not a good sharpener. Say it takes you a while. When you're processing animals, it's kind of a thing. You ain't got to hurry, but you can't be stopping and saying like, oh, well, I can go and take, a 15, 30-minute hour break and come back. You can't be doing that. So keeping some of these on hand, if one of them gets dull and you're not good at sharpening, keep you 3 or 4 on hand, so that way you can just pop out the next one continue working, and then sharpen them all when you're done. If you're, going to do it that way. So having just a good cheap knife, but that has a good edge, because if you want to hate yourself and hate all the muscles in your fingers, in your hands, in your wrist, in your forearms, ask me how I know. Try to butcher with a dull or a semi-dull knife. It's too much work. Too much work. Don't mess with it. So keep your knives good and sharp. Whatever method you have to do, I would encourage everybody to be a good, sharpener. I'm just not, and so I accept where my strengths and weaknesses are. The second tool, and this is pretty much all the tools you will need for butchering most of your small livestock, is 5-gallon buckets. So I normally keep 1 or 2 full with water, just because it's a lot easier than trying to be messing with the hose or a faucet or whatever you have, to just dip your whole hand into that bucket with the knife to clean off if you've got, fur, feathers, whatever it may be. Being able to have a couple of those buckets, if one of them starts to get nasty, you can dump it out and have the other one filling up, and you can be using, the clean bucket while that one's filling or whatever. So having buckets for that, and having buckets for all the leftovers. If there's, anything like, your guts, heads, feet, whatever it is that you may not be using or may be using for another purpose, you've got that bucket to be able to just drop everything in there and move on with your life. So that's most of them. So a lot of like your poultry, chicken, turkeys, ducks, are really, in my opinion, done better on a table. So if you've got, and for me, I take just 2 sawhorses and a 4-inch maple slab that I milled that I butcher on. And you could do that same setup with, a 2x10 or a 2x12 and a couple of sawhorses from Lowe's. Or you can buy, just a Costco table, get a stainless steel table with a sink. You just need a good work surface. Have somewhere where you can put everything and not have to be worrying about where you're going to set the cuts of meat and, where you're going to set the carcass, your knife, all that stuff. Get a, good staged area. Now, for some of your smaller animals, like, rabbits, I make gambrel to hang their feet from. If it's, medium livestock, you can buy those they've got them at Harbor Freight for like $15. Ones for deer, I think they'll do somewhere around like 240 pounds max. And so those are pretty much your only tools. But even if you wanted to do rabbits and you didn't hang them by their feet, you can do it with just the bucket, table, and knife. But I would recommend, if you're going to do something like just rabbits in particular, or any other kind of mammal like that, because you're going to be skinning them, I would recommend getting a gambrel or making one. They're pretty easy to make. So that's pretty much it on the tools. There's not a whole lot that goes into tools unless you're really going to do this a whole lot. I mean, keep it on the cheap, because that's going to add to the cost of your meat. The more you spend on tools, the more you spend on all this stuff, it just makes that price per pound go up. And before you realize it, you're thinking like, oh man, I'm saving money because I'm, raising these animals and everything. You're like, holy crap, this is $30 a pound. And you don't want it to be $30 a pound. You want it to be like my duck. I could really and truly, if I wanted to sell, which now it's a very high quality red meat. So if I were going to sell it, it would go in the grocery store. If you look online, Muscovy is extremely expensive. But if I sold it in the store just like beef, it would range anywhere from around $10 to $15 a pound, and I can be very profitable on that.
Wow.
If I charge that much, I could even be profitable on $10 a pound. That's counting my labor for processing, the feed that goes into the duck, because they do forage a lot if you raise them in the right season. And the fact that I don't spend a whole lot on tools. One thing I'll mention that's not really a tool, but you do need to have, is an ice box, whether it's one that you homemade or whether you do just like a cooler, somewhere to put ice and the meat. because there's some, process with that, which we're going to get into in butcher methods. But that's something else you want to have on hand just to make sure that you keep that meat cool. So that's not really a tool, but it's definitely, a material that you're going to need to, an item you're going to have to purchase or you need to have to be able to do the processing. So, so that gets us covered on tools. I don't know if y'all got anything to add or questions.
Yeah, I got a little bit to add. The Victor, I think the company's name is Victorinox, but if you want to buy like a pretty decent set of knives, I went out and got some, like a full set of like different types of knives, like fillet and like skinning knives and all that kind of stuff. They're not that expensive, but those Victorinox knives, if you want to go a little bit above the Walmart knives, they're another option, and there's something that probably lasts a long time too. And you can just keep resharpening them. And so I went with those, and then after the butchering, I guess I haven't done this every time with chickens, but I guess I've learned, like, having, like you said, having that cooler with the ice there. I think that is important to, as soon as you eviscerate the guts out and take all the guts out and everything, then you want to get that on ice as soon as you can, I guess. After you've gotten all that cleaned up. I don't know. Maybe some people do that. Maybe some don't.
So I will say this, that the fears that we have with food safety of, like, oh my Lord, it sat outside for 2 minutes and a fly landed on it and now we're all gonna die. You've got those people that are chicken little the sky is falling types of people. If they saw how their meat was handled and how many times it is de-thawed and refrozen before it gets to the grocery store, they wouldn't be able to eat anything. They wouldn't be able to stomach it. Being outside in the open air and processing everything, if that meat doesn't immediately go into that ice, you are not going to die. There is huge scares about raw meat. I mean, these ducks that I was processing, I had a couple of guys come up that were delivering some tin to my dad, and they, known them a long time. They work with my dad, and I was out there processing duck, and I told him, I said, if I known y'all was coming, I'd have been ready to help you instead of being, elbow deep in this. And they were, looking at the meat and everything, and my dad, of course, because he's all the time, ribbing me and everything, he's like, oh yeah, Logan eats that stuff raw. And I was in the chest cavity, and I pulled out the heart, and I ate the heart in front of him. I just ate the raw heart. I said it's better with some seasoning, but I like it like this. And one of the old guys said, I like my meat warm, and I said, it is warm. It was just killed. It's body temperature. But there are so many fears about processing these animals. Now you can't do that with every animal. And chicken and stuff. Chicken does not come with salmonella. If chickens had salmonella naturally, they would just die. I mean, there's a lot of fear, but then there is also good practices that we don't want to skimp over and end up having some kind of meat-borne illness and get ourselves sick. So keeping things clean, getting it chilled as soon as possible, those are all important practices, but it's not something to be just constantly fretting over. And if something were to fall on the ground and got a little dirty, if you hose it off, I can promise you it's not going to kill you. I can promise you it's going to be okay. It's not dropping onto a kill floor where there's, mountains of manure and just all kinds of icky stuff, and it's not going through 18 chlorine baths. So your fears don't need to dictate like how you do everything, but you need to make sure that you're doing good practices and handling that meat properly, because you can. I mean, you can do it in ways that it's not safe. You don't need to leave it sitting out there and let flies lay eggs on it. You don't need to leave it out in the hot boiling sun. Get it on ice. Just use some common sense. Make sure that you're clean. You don't have to be sterile. Just be clean, sanitary in your practices, and you'll be good. Good natural stuff is just water, salt is a good cleanser. I use that on my board. I put some kosher salt on it. Excellent for keeping things nice and clean, not sterile. We don't want sterile. We want living food. So that's got our tools. And I think that getting some good knives will be a good thing. You can kind of go the cheap route, go the mid route. I'd say go the mid route after you've learned to sharpen, real good. Or, depending on how much they cost, just do a cost analysis of it.
Make sure you do have a sharp knife, though. That is.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add. Not only does it cut down on fatigue from doing that, it's also extremely unsafe to be cutting with a dull knife, because you'll slip out of your hand so fast because you're putting a little too much extra pressure, and then there goes a finger, there goes whatever, So sharp knives are scary too, because it just takes a little nick and you're cut good. But safety wise,
but they're safer.
They're much safer.
And one thing I will add, this kind of just connects with mental prep. I guess this is more with mental health. What we're talking about is we're not talking about building a huge facility. Do a cost analysis, figure out, what's going to be the most economical, so that way you're not adding, more dollars to your meat on the knives and other tools that you might be using. But realize that you're not going to be doing this every day. No one for a 40-hour week job, in my opinion, should be killing animals and processing them. It is not good for your mental health. It should be something that's seasonal. People should rotate. A lot more people should be doing that job than they are right now. It's extremely, you want to talk about how inhumanely they treat the animals in these factory settings where they're doing all this processing. The workers are treated horrible. They get carpal tunnel syndrome from doing just the same repetitious motion over and over again. It's just soul draining. I mean, all you're surrounded by is death of animals that have been just, brutally handled, brutally dispatched, and you're just constantly just, tearing meat apart. It's not good for your soul. It's not good for your mental health. If you ever are doing it a lot, I like Joel Salatin's advice on this. If you ever get to a point where you don't feel something, take a break. So keep that in mind on doing that. So stay somewhere in the mid tier and the lower end, because you're not going to make this your full-time job. I don't think anybody should do it just 40 hours a week. It's pretty rough. Unless you're doing it in a way that you're processing like maybe a pig for somebody, you're doing something like custom butcher for people, I think can be. But even that seasonal, those guys, as far as I know, don't do it every single day and, just animal after animal. Which brings us to dispatch methods. There's a lot of different ways to kill an animal. Like the old saying, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, right? With different animals, there's going to be different dispatch methods. This is another thing that connects back to the mental deal. When it comes to the dispatch and the dispatch method and the way that you choose, another thing for the mental prep you should do is get ready to forgive yourself, because whatever way you choose, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to mess it up some the first time you dispatch an animal. But know that when you do it, you're learning, so that way you can be efficient at it. So that way future animals that you dispatch will have a more painless dispatch. Dispatch methods vary. For example, with pigs and something like sheep, a 22 rifle is your friend. That is the quickest way. Just like with Greg, I don't know if you can pull up the pictures of the hog that we processed, but he was shot with a 22, and he was I think 350-pound live weight, and there he is going into the scalding tub. There, we had just a 55-gallon barrel there over a fire with water in it, dropping him in there with a backhoe. A 22 is a way to dispatch a lot of your medium livestock. There's some stuff with like halal and kosher where the animals, I believe, they're tied and then their throats slit. If you're just starting out doing this, I don't recommend that. Get a 22 pistol, Magnum, or some with a hollow point, or a rifle, and shoot that pig. If it's a pig, you make just basically an X from their ears and their eyes. So you're going like from this side to that ear and this side to that ear, making an X right there in the middle, and that'll get their brain. So after that, then you bleed them out. You want to get that blood out. So shoot them in the head, then you slit their jugulars and allow that blood to come out of the animal. So that's one dispatch method. With chickens and a lot of poultry and even rabbits, there is the broomstick method, which is taking a broomstick or some kind of stick, you put the chicken on the ground and you put that board or stick or broomstick on the back of their neck, and then you grab their legs and pull up and it dislocates their neck. That's the way that I like to do it with rabbits, except for I do not use a broomstick. I use my hands. I've got videos where I show how I do that on YouTube, and it's a very quick and painless way for them to go. It just completely dislocates everything. No brain, no pain. It just takes that spinal cord and disconnects everything. So you can do that, or you can bleed them out by slitting the jugular, like with chickens or ducks. And that's another method. But with your smaller livestock, you don't have to worry so much about whether or not you're going to be able to properly do the dispatch method, because they're smaller and you can handle them a lot better. I just think that with your medium to a little bit larger livestock, you want to use a gun to take them out, because a 350-pound pig, you do not want to be in there trying to stick that pig. I mean, suicide. It's absolute suicide. Even if you got the thing tied, I just don't recommend it. So there's different dispatch methods. You need to find the one that you're good at and the one that's going to cause the least amount of pain to the animal. Those are the only two criteria that you need to be looking at. People will tell you that, oh, this is the way, that's the way. You want to, from your own experience, you're going to realize that all of them pretty much kill the animal, and pretty much instantly. You just need to do the one that's going to allow you to give that animal the most humane death. We will touch real quick on in the dispatch. A lot of animals, well, really the majority of them, I don't know many that don't, and there's every once in a while you get a kill that you don't really have that much. There's a thing called the death throes, and I've got video of it on my YouTube channel where I'm explaining it when it happens. When I dislocate the neck of the rabbits, you can look in their eyes. Their eyes are completely dull, like there's no life in them. Their head's just, it's dead. But that rabbit will lay down on the ground and it'll kick for probably about 30 seconds and be moving. It's just the muscle tissue twitching is what it is. And so be mentally prepared for that. All of this goes back to that mental prep. That's why I said it's the most important, because you need to be prepared to know that, like, hey, I need to see what the vital signs to make sure that I did dispatch the animal. Because now if the animal's breathing, you didn't kill them all the way. And that's a bad feeling if you've got an animal breathing and they're moving around and they look like they're dead, but they're really not. So you want to make sure they're not breathing, but you're going to get some of that. You're going to get some flopping around. And with the ducks, I kind of just hold on to them until they stop moving. And, I still might get, a little bit of this with their feet, but that animal's dead. It ain't got no head. The brain and everything's been disconnected. So you need to be mentally prepared for that, knowing that you did your job right. And that's just something natural that happens with the muscle tissues after death. So don't be alarmed by that when that happens, because it's going to happen. Any animal you kill, you're going to have some of the death throes. Humans even do it from time to time, which I hope nobody ever has to see that. But death throes is something that's natural, and it's nothing that you did wrong if that happens. So, anything else on dispatch before we move to butcher methods?
How did they do it before, or how do you think they did it before they had guns? They just arrow them or something? I don't know, like through the heart or something like that.
Well, before guns, I don't know in medieval times, like in England or something. But if I think about like Native Americans here, they harvested a lot of buffalo, and they were shooting them and spearing them with arrows and spears. So that's because they certainly. I mean, they were very fit fellas, and they were very healthy because they had a very natural diet. But I guarantee you, none of them were stupid enough to jump on the back of a buffalo or try to tie one up and then try to, stab him. Now, back in medieval times in, like Europe, I'm not really sure. I'd have to research that, but they may have had some tying method where they'd stick the pig. They'd have to lasso them or something, I'm guessing. That would be a really dangerous job, especially on a larger pig, because pigs are just so stout. I can, once a pig gets past about 60 pounds, I can't handle them. Like I 60 pounds and under, pretty much, I can pick them up. I can wear them out. I'm a pretty stout fella, but after you get as soon as they hit 61 pounds, they're having their way with me. They're tough little. Tiny, really got this just super dense center of gravity, and they're just a solid muscle, little old bitty short legs and stuff. So it's you don't want to get hooved or tusked by one of these animals. So use a gun. If we ever lost firearms, well, I guess we'd figure it out how to do it. We'd probably start using or killing a lot of smaller livestock or going back to arrows, I'd assume. But
we ain't losing our firearms.
Yeah, no, I ain't losing mine anyway. So butcher methods. You can go onto YouTube and you can look at ways to butcher a lamb. You can look at ways to butcher a pig. You can look at it for duck, chicken, turkeys, cleaning fish, whatever it may be. And there are tons of different methods out there. The one thing that is going to make you successful at butchering your own animals is the practice. As I have done the ducks, I have realized that the majority of their meat is in their breast and their legs. You can skin one whole, or you could throw it in a picker, which we don't have, but scalding ducks and getting their skin and everything, it's kind of difficult. And I'm all about using the whole animal if you can. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be all used by you. There's a lot of other individuals on the homestead that can benefit from the leftovers of animals that you may not use. If you think about any apex predator, like lions, for example, lions aren't over there going, oh, we got to use the whole animal, man. Got to, get the bone marrow and all that stuff. It's like, no. They get what they want. They get the big old chunks of meat. Later, the hyenas come in. They pick the rest of it clean. Eat the nasty stuff like the colon, the butthole, the freaking bone, bone marrow if they can crack the bones open, and then a lot, some vultures and stuff come and finish a lot of the other stuff off. So don't think that you've been disrespectful to the animal or that you're wasting it if you just cycle it in a different manner. So, for example, with the ducks, The pigs got some leftovers of the ducks. I'm jumping a little bit ahead to waste management here. Let me reel myself back in. So anyway, I've realized that the ducks, you got breast and legs. So there is a very specific way that I butcher them that allows me to take out the breast, the legs, and the heart. For me is, a big treat. So I go into the chest cavity and get that out. And those are the three, body parts that I take off of those ducks, which the breast, I also count the duck tenders. Like, you've got on a chicken breast, you've got their breast, and then underneath it, you've got like a little tenderloin basically underneath those breasts, which are where chicken tenders come from. And I take those. And so that's like 2.5 pounds of meat on average from each duck. And the rest of the meat that's on there, there's a little bit left, but to me, it's not worth trying to pick all through it. And it's really tough to get it done if you're skinning the duck. So just finding the butchering methods that's going to help you, do it most efficiently. Like, for example, with the rabbits, over time, I have changed my butchering methods on them because of things that I've learned, videos that I've seen, different methods of, different people, quicker ways to do it. You just need to find a way, find a video, find a forum online, find somebody that's already doing it, adopt their method. And then as you need to, you can adjust that method to make it fit you better, because there's going to be some people that the way that I butcher those ducks, they may not be able to do it the same way, and they may find it easier to do it another way. So find one that's, a method that'll teach you and get you to where you know what you're doing when you're breaking down the animal. And then as you go through, you can work out those efficiencies, and you can say, hey, you know what? It works a little bit better if I'll go ahead and cut this tendon before I do this step, just as an example. So find a method, adopt it, you work on the efficiencies as you go, and you get more practice, because there may come a time where you realize that it's like, hey, this is actually the best method. I just sucked at, butchering to start out with. And that's okay. All of us, we're not all going to be just perfect at everything we do the first time. So, give it some time, but if you need to adjust. So there's tons of methods out there. Pick one, get started, get your practice in, so that way you can, hone your skills and work out those efficiencies later. Which brings us to waste management. If you have ever smelt roadkill or ever, been around anything dead, you know that you don't want a bunch of dead animal parts laying around out in your yard. So we've got to do something with what's left over. And this is something to have well thought out before you go into your butchering endeavors. It's what you're going to do with all the leftovers. So going back to the ducks, I have a pretty good bit of the duck carcass that's left over. There's some feet, which are not, dogs and everything kind of just play with those and eat them over time. They're like a treat. So you've got the feet, you've got all the feathers, and then you've got what's left of the carcass and the innards. And like with these ducks that I did 6 of them. I think 3 of them went to the pigs. So the pigs ate the leftovers of that. A couple of them went to the black soldier fly larva, which just turns into feed for my chickens later on. And then, Skoda got some pieces. And then one of the ducks went to the baby chickens. So the baby chickens, they kind of picked it clean with their mom, getting those little meat parts and stuff. And all of it got used. So that's the most important thing, is that you've used the whole animal. And, sometimes that's to feed the soul. So if you've got an area that you can bury some of that stuff, like with the rabbits, a lot of times I've had to, just because they've got all that fur and stuff, I've had to bury them. And, that adds to the soil life. So just make sure you've got a plan ahead, and if you're going to bury them, go ahead and dig the hole before you kill the first rabbit. Because after you get done, processing all those animals, the last thing you want to do is dig a hole to dump a bunch of fur heads and, crap in. It's something you don't want to be doing at the end of the day after you've done all that work. So do it ahead of time, have a place to go. I can't recommend the black soldier fly larva enough for people that are going to do butchering at home. And I was actually talking to Greg and his dad about this yesterday when we were working on the cabin. You can put it in like a barrel or, some kind of container, whatever you can get set up, and collect coffee grounds, either if they're your own or if you go and get them from Starbucks like I do and, get the big bags to cover up the smell. So if you're going to do butcher day, you can go and you can throw them into all those bins and then cover it up with coffee grounds. The coffee grounds will be eaten by the black soldier fly larva, and it's going to cover up the smell. You're not going to have any rotten smell. You're just going to smell coffee grounds. Or you're going to smell and I've actually got, I've got them ready for fishing tomorrow up here. See if I can get them down. But these are the black soldier fly larvae when they're getting ready to pupate here. I don't know if we can get it close enough to. You can see them moving around. But these guys here, in just a couple of days, you can throw what's left over of a carcass in a big enough system, and it's gone. And this, the chickens, ducks, fish, just about pigs will eat them. Just about anything will eat those black soldier fly larvae. They're like it's 40% protein and 30% fat, dry weight or something, which is huge. It's a superfood for homestead animals, anything that's an omnivore. That's one of the easiest ways to do the waste management, but it's something you've got to think about ahead of time, because if you don't, you're going to have a whole bunch of stinky crap on your hands at the end and have to figure out, what you're going to do with it. But that's pretty much it. I hope that I have not scared anybody away from doing this. I'm really hoping that the things that I've talked about will empower people, but also give you a sense of the reality of processing on the homestead, and that you'll properly prepare for it. So that way it can be the best experience that it can be.
Awesome.
Now I think like you sold me on the black soldier fly thing, because that is a really great way of being able to create an additional feed source for animals like backyard chickens.
Yep.
And any kind of thing that you might want to compost or get rid of, like we're talking about, like the leftover guts or whatever from the animal that maybe you don't want to attract in like other predators to and stuff like that. Like that'd be a great way of handling it. And throw in those extra coffee grounds from coffee that you make, and if you can find a local source. Is it just coffee grounds that they like to eat, or like they'll eat any kind of organic material that you throw in there, or what's so special about the coffee grounds for the black soldier fly larva?
So for me, the thing that I like the most about the coffee grounds is that it's so readily available, and they'll eat it. And it's a super quick way to turn something that is, in most people's view, useless into a protein and fat source. That's just number one. And the main reason I use the coffee grounds and how I always have them on hand is just to be able to cover up the smell of anything, because black soldier fly larvae, they like rotting stuff. They want, rotting vegetables, rotting meat. Heck, you can throw a birthday cake in there. If it's organic matter that can be broken down, they'll eat it, no matter what it is. Now, the only thing that you're going to be left over with is stuff like bones, feathers, anything that's like if it's anything that has an exoskeleton. If you were throwing like crawfish, leftovers or something in there, you're probably going to have the shells, or something like crab. Anything that's like that kind of material, they're not going to break down. But if it's something that can, it's a little mushy and it stinks, they're all about it. And one really awesome thing is if you go in there and you get a system set up, if flies ever try to lay eggs in there and they get maggots, the black soldier fly larva will not only outcompete them, but a lot of times I think they're straight up just eating the fly eggs and the maggots because they're just so aggressive. And now in my setups, black soldier fly larvae, because they are such aggressive eaters, the adults will lay the eggs above the food source. So, like, for example, in my round barrels, you've got all the stuff down here in the bottom. They'll lay their eggs up here on the side and on the top because they know if they lay their eggs in there with all the brothers and sisters, those eggs don't ever stand a chance of hatching because they'll get eaten because they're not constantly moving. Yeah, I mean, they are super aggressive feeders. That's also why you can set up systems to self-harvest. You can go on YouTube, look at my videos on the black soldier fly larva bins that I've been making and experiments I've been doing, and you can see that they're super easy to harvest because those pupa, when they start to pupate, so these here, these are really close to getting to start to pupate. I have to get them down off of the sides here so that way they're not all crawling out, but I'm going to get one and show you. That when they get black like this, I don't know if I'm going to be it. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus here. They do this. So when they get ready, can I move it to where it'll focus? You can kind of see, but you can see the color at least. There it is.
There you go.
So once they get ready to pupate, they're going to turn hard and be stiff, and they're not going to move around. So they don't want to be in there with the younger maggots and get eaten. Because if they don't, they can't hatch out into an adult fly, lay their eggs, and start all over. But I feel like I'm starting to turn this into the black soldier fly larva show. And I think that could be a whole show on its own. Because there's a lot to go on about it.
Yeah, actually.
Because I mean, these guys are just so useful for so many things.
Logan, I had one question about butchering methods, or the butchering process, I should say. I know with cows, and because cows are so big, and we buy so many different parts of the cow at the store, and if you just think about the different steaks and roasts and hamburger and, I mean, there's just a million different things. And that really comes from just butchering the same cow a couple different ways, right? How it's cut up, it's like, oh, well, I want this as opposed to that. Well, we have to butcher it a certain way. Have you run into where how you're actually consuming the animal refers back to the butchering method you use and go, I'm going to butcher them different this way because it ends up cooking better, or the way we prepare it ends up being better if I would have cut it a different way, or maybe that piece of meat should be with that part of the carcass and not this part, or you know what I'm saying? It's true with cattle, so I'm assuming on some level it is with it's like especially maybe rabbits. I don't know.
Absolutely. So yeah, each part is going to have a little bit of a different flavor. Some of the muscles are going to be a little, which this is getting, a little more advanced. And something that I'm not a huge expert on, but with the animals that I have processed, I know them pretty well. Just like with the rabbits, their front legs and their, front half really is better for cooking over, like, say, an open fire, or maybe roasting, because of the flavor profile. Just like with the back legs of the rabbit. Now, rabbit, one thing for me is it does not dry out like chicken. Chicken is really like with the chicken breast, you got to be careful. You can dry out a chicken breast, but with the rabbit, it's pretty hard to dry them out. But there are different, textures and flavors to different parts of the animal. So a lot of times it comes down to preference of what people like. And so, as you do that too, you may, take a certain cut and be like, hey, you know what? If I separated the shank from, the shoulder, then it would probably be better cooked in these two different ways.
Right.
And so, yeah, you're definitely going to run into that. Just like with the duck, my wife loves to make soups and stuff like that, and has, stuff gets like really well done. And so for her soups, what we do is like the legs of the duck, just because duck meat to me is just so precious and holy. I love the duck. And so I'll take the legs and grill them and then cut off the pieces that are not connected to tendon, because duck tendon is on the Muscovies anyway, and their legs is extremely tough. I mean, you just can sit there and chew on it, and you're never going to chew through it. So I'll take off the more tender muscles off of those tendon and off of that bone, and just the leftover meat and tendon and bone that's on that leg, she can throw in the soup, because that stuff can cook down, and that meat's eventually going to come off that bone and, be part of the soup. So that, is just an example of being able to utilize the animal better. So like for that, if I left that bone on, and anytime I've tried to just eat the leg itself, you always get down to that part to where you can't get that meat off of the tendons and everything. And I mean, if you don't care about spit, you could just throw that into the soup if you wanted to. But I prefer to cut the pieces of meat off of the leg and leave that part with the tougher tendon in for the soups. The breast, I want to leave them whole and want to cook them like a steak, because they almost look, if you didn't see them in the exact shape of a breast, if you cut them up into like slices, like at a fancy restaurant, and laid them out, you would think it was something like a New York strip. People would have a very hard time, if they didn't really know their meats, being able to tell the difference in the two. So yeah, you're going to find that just like the cow. Now, you may not be as sophisticated as a lot of these butchers that have been doing beef for hundreds of years, and we know all these different cuts, but you will definitely find that there are certain pieces you want to cook in a certain way, and you want to have them separate. So you want to piece out the animal. Yeah.
I think talking to you one time also, Logan, you were talking about a certain way that you put the lamb specifically on ice, and then you would drain out you would kind of let the ice melt and then drain it out some to help remove some of the blood from the meat or something like that as another method.
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that. And that's I really didn't have this in the presentation, but that's, an aging type of thing. I'm really glad you brought it up, because this is really important, and we need to cover it. Like for example, with rabbit, everybody should do their own research, because this is such a broad topic. We're not going to be able to cover every little thing, but with rabbit and any other animal, you want to at least have it sitting at a refrigerated temperature for minimum 24 hours. I say it's more like 48 or more, because you're wanting the rigor mortis to get out of that animal. So that way, when you freeze it, you're not freezing all those muscle fibers in those, tight, clenched up positions that they're going to be, and it'll make the meat a lot more tender. Because if you get them with the rigor mortis, if you're going to eat the animal fresh, it needs to be about within 30 minutes of killing that animal, which I have done. Whether it's just a fresh raw heart, or whether it's cleaning it and throwing it on the grill. You can do that, but you want to make sure that you don't have the rigor mortis set into the meat and then end up freezing it. With the lamb, pork, and now it's the way I do every single animal on the aging process, is I put it into either my freezer or my cooler. I take the drain out, or you have it to where it'll drain slowly, and I put layers of meat and layers of ice, and I just add ice to it as it drops, the level of the ice drops down. And I do that for about a week with lamb. A lot of people, they're getting what they're calling either gamey flavor, or, sometimes, now boar taint is a real thing. That does happen. But the aging process of that, I have found that people have said, oh, it tastes so much better. Now, we had some lamb that was not aged like that, and it was good. We loved it. It was good lamb. But the lamb that we had that was done with the ice method, way better. Significant difference for us anyway. There may be some people who taste it and say, oh, I can't taste no difference in that. You're doing all that work for nothing. But it's really, really good to do it that way. And it saves, like, I've got a video where I've got an old freezer that I've converted, just took out the compression stuff to where it's lighter. I got to put some handles on it, but I'm going to have it where I can move it around, and I can fit whole halves of lamb in there, or, you know, smaller pigs, and do the ice method like that. And it's ice, especially we're going to look at getting a good ice maker, probably something bigger than what your, you know, like kitchen little ice maker, something maybe that'll produce some, you know, larger quantities, because from what I've been looking at, the ice makers use less electricity than most of your refrigerators and freezers. And so for the butchering process too, I mean, you can go get a good cooler, you know, for $100 and not take up your freezer space. And then that way, when that animal's aged and it's nice and, you know, tender, you can cut it and everything into the pieces. You can seal it into bags or do however you do and put it in your freezer. And you're not having to have like a walk-in cooler, because that's something, if you're going to do medium livestock, that could stop some people from doing that because they don't have the space and they don't want to build a walk-in freezer or walk-in cooler. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really, really good point.
Well, awesome. I think that was an excellent presentation, and thanks for putting all that together tonight, Logan. We're coming up on an hour. If we want to go around the horn and let people know how they can follow you and support you. Since Logan, you did the presentation, why don't you go first?
Sweet. Logan with Hideaway Homestead. I'm on YouTube. You can email me at hideawayhomestead at gmail.com, and or, you know, in the YouTube comments. I am on X. I don't have anything up there except for the pictures that I posted for this presentation tonight. I need to get a little more active on there. So you can follow me on X. Get there before my profile actually looks decent. So yeah, those are the places you can follow me.
Awesome.
All
John
right,
Tejan, DJ Cattle Company. You can find me on X at Soul Survivor 78, and I post different stuff on different topics, so it might not appeal to you 100%, but you know, I don't like people 100% anyway either, so you know, it's just human nature. I'm just kidding. Well, actually not, but anyway, I'm around.
All right, and I'm Greg Dowd, and you can find me here on the Tinker Tribe YouTube channel, and I've also got social media for a fitness journey I'm doing at Take the Ride 23, pretty much on all the social media platforms. If you're looking to get fit and active, you can check that out for some inspiration. So all right, guys, thanks again for hanging out with us tonight, and we'll see you next time. Bye.